All right, fans, we have something special here for tonight. We did our boys preview already, and now we've evolved, and we now have a girls preview to do. We're brought on, some of the people who really worked behind the scenes to get us to where we're at today with wrestling sanctioned here in the state of Pennsylvania for girls. Chris Atkinson and Brooke Zumas. Brooke, we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you kind of fit into, the whole sanctioning wrestling in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, thank you, Joe, for having us. So I have been a lifelong wrestling fan really my whole life. I wanted to wrestle when I was little and I didn't have the opportunity. So I've just kind of been involved in the sport in different ways throughout my life. I actually did photography for a while, which was fun. It's like a little grad school activity. I also started coaching about 9 or 10 years ago. So I was with the Beat the Streets co-ed program and then a high school program. And then when the kind of girls wrestling movement was starting, Pat Tossi had reached out to me and just said, "Hey, we're trying to work towards sanctioning. Would you be willing to hop into this group and help us get to that finish line?" And I said, "Absolutely." And from there, it was 3 years, I guess, Chris, of a lot of craziness, but yeah, we got there. So
Chris, you and I had the opportunity to meet a few years back when we did the state finals together, and you sat in and we talked about it. You know, talk about all that you've poured into this. I know you got a daughter in it. You're the former head wrestling coach at Souderton, now the current girls head coach, if I'm correct. Tell me what your story to this and how we got to where we're at today.
I've been involved at Souderton probably going back to the early 2000s. I had a older son that wrestled at Souderton, and when he started in high school, my daughter McKenna at the time was 5, and girls wrestling at the time was really fighting to find a stronghold. We're going back to 2015, 2016. Less than 100 girls across the state competing at that time, and a very, very, very few amount of girls that were doing it legitimately and being competitive outside the state. So I linked in with several families at the time who were really passionate and really driven to try and promote the sport. Fast forward now to my daughter's a freshman in high school, and ironically, this is the first year for girls wrestling as an officially sanctioned sport with the PIAA. It's been a long, crazy journey, but we're all proud that we're here, and we're really super excited and stoked to see how this first official season goes.
For the casual fan that is like wondering how things work. Let's just start, and I know we have some graphics we're going to put up on the screen. Let's just start with like basic rules, because there's some, maybe misconceptions out there or, different thought processes going on with some parents and fans. So let's start with the basic one. If your high school does not have a girls team, what are the girls' options?
So I actually will even take one step back. So first of all the wrestling rules are the same. So we get that question asked a lot. So just remember, it's all the same. It's the same rule book as the boys. If a school only has a boys team, then if a girl wants to participate in the sport, she has to be rostered on that boys team. So she has to go through weight certs. You need to be on an official PIAA roster. And then those girls, it would be expected that they'd follow the boys team's schedule. And I'll talk more about that in a second. But in terms of the postseason, the girl can then choose which postseason to compete in, boys or girls. So they do have that ability. And that precedent was already set in a sport, golf specifically, with the PIAA. So girls are able to opt into either the girls or boys postseason. Going back to in season though for a second. So these girls, just what it says, they can compete in girls tournaments, but the competition points would go back to the boys team. And really, because most boys teams are probably at their competition point limit, the reality is those girls are going to end up mostly following that boys schedule, if not completely following the boys schedule. Chris, anything else you would add on that?
No, that's completely accurate. Just to use an example, and I'm not going to name the school, but we actually just saw this issue pop up a little while ago where a school had declared a girls team, and then the girl inevitably started competing on her boys team. We had to have conversations with the school to make them aware that if that's the way they're going to continue to progress, then that girl is not going to be eligible for the girls postseason. So they're at a point now where they have to make a decision whether to keep the girls team and support the girls side, or allow that girl to keep wrestling on the boys side and supporting their boys team. So yeah, we actually just had this creep up with the team in the state.
Now, do you think this is, do you think this is going to become a problem for those schools that maybe aren't like jumping in and creating a girls program? Like maybe they're dragging their feet. Do you see this like being like a regular occurrence problem, or is it maybe more like just an oversight?
I would hope that coaches on the boys programs that are supporting the few girls that they have, that they see the momentum statewide, and they see how well all these other programs and pockets of girls around the state are doing, and they want to hop in. At the end of the day, do what's best for your female wrestlers, and we're hoping that the huge surge that we've had in numbers this year will propel those other programs to hop on board, and to start girls programs. Even if you have a single wrestler, why not get her own competition points and allow her to go out there and compete as one, against other girls, instead of tagging along with the boys team all season.
Right. That was just, where I was going with that. There seems it kind of spread like wildfire, in the last like 9 or so months, where, there were X amount of schools that were sanctioned, and then it was like dominoes falling, and until you hit that 100. It was awesome. Like, waiting to see. As a teacher at O&J, I said about 5 years ago, I said within 2 years we'd have a program. I was a little off, but I know at O&J they went above and beyond and jumped through hoops and did everything they could to make it happen for this season. And it's been nothing short of like a great experience, getting kids involved in a sport that they otherwise wouldn't entertain doing because of having to join the boys team.
Yeah, and I think that's like one of the huge misconceptions that we saw over time, was so many coaches and administrators, and I understand the thinking, but they would say, well, we don't have any girls interested in girls wrestling. We have one girl on the boys team, or we don't have any girls on the boys team, so nobody's interested. And I think what was one thing that starting girls teams showed us is that the number of girls that are on the boys team is really not representative of how many girls are interested in wrestling if there is a girls team. And so as soon as that opportunity pops up, you tend to see way more girls going out than we're just going out for the boys team. So it really exactly how you described that. And it creates momentum in and of itself to just form a girls team at the school. Even if there's no girls, you'll get some just by forming.
Yeah, and I know, Chris, like McKenna's story is pretty accurate to the experience that I've seen at O&J. You have a lot of the younger sisters that ultimately got involved because they probably spent way too much time in a wrestling room, at where their brother was practicing, and then all of a sudden, like, now they have this opportunity, and that now there's a team. And I think it's just great for the sport, because all it does is it grow it further. It gets another audience, another more sets of eyes on it, and brings to light what us fans have known for a long time, as far as the benefits of being part of something like this. So I guess my next question is we talked about what happens if there's a boys team, and a girls team, if there's a boys team only. Obviously this is new, so we look at like where, well, I guess let you guys explain what happens if there's a boys and a girls team, because it's not just cut and dry. You have one, you have the other, because there's some gray area to it. So I'll let you guys, since you guys are the experts on this.
Well, I think Chris already spoke to some of this before, but yeah, just to expand, I think one of the biggest things to remember is, so if a school has a boys and a girls team, she actually is allowed, a girl or multiple girls are allowed to still opt onto the boys team. But if they do that, they aren't eligible anymore for the girls postseason, because really, in a sense, what it's saying is, hey, you had these two options. You did have the chance, the opportunity was provided to you to be on a girls team, and you are selecting yourself off of it. So by doing that, you are committed to the boys team for the entire season, including the postseason. For those girls on a girls team, though, they are eligible, obviously, for the girls postseason. And then what they have is the coveted extra 22 competition points that comes when you form that girls team. So these are the girls we're going to see at all the girls tournaments throughout the season, because by going there, they're not using boys competition points. They're rostered on that girls team. They have their own 22 points. So they're going to be out there all season competing at these girls events. Chris, what else would you say?
No, I think that's accurate. And, it's funny. One of the things this leads into is competitions. Brooke and I had talked through the summer, and there were a lot of schools that wanted to start girls competitions, but they were in such close proximity or on the same date of a tournament that was kind of already there, occupying that date in their region. And it's like, gosh, do we have the numbers to support multiple events within, the Pittsburgh area, within northeastern Pennsylvania, within District 1? And our message to tournament directors was like, be careful stepping on one another's toes. Now, with the explosion of the numbers, I know just this past weekend, North Penn, over 30 schools, 200 wrestlers, and Executive Charter right up in Allentown held a tournament the same exact day, and they had good numbers up there. I can tell you my tournament on the 13th of January at Souderton, I've had to turn several schools away just because the numbers, I couldn't risk them getting out of control because we're running a boys duels the same day. So it's a good problem to have. But yeah, we're running into this area now where the explosion's getting away from us a little bit, and we have to stay on top of the infrastructure to make sure that there's enough opportunity for all these teams to go around.
So is your tournament going to coincide with the big red duels?
Yeah, thank God Souderton built that big fancy high school, because we're going to need every square inch of it. We have a 16-team boys high school duels, and the athletic director was adamant about doing a girls event this year, which I'm all on board for. It's going to make things tight. So yeah, we're going to run 8 mats that day across 2 gyms, and give all the fans a lot of wrestling to watch.
That's one thing I will say, for if you've never been to an event at Souderton, they not only have the facility to do it, but they have the community support to make it happen. When you guys host the regional tournament, it always goes smoothly. You find ways. I remember a couple years back, you hosted a state playoff basketball game at noon, and then turned the gym over and had it ready to go at 3:00. It was super impressive. Only reason I know that is because O&J played in that game at Souderton that day. But so you spoke about different areas of the state and supporting stuff. Again, we're not at the numbers yet that the boys side have. So let's talk a little bit about how the breakdown of the different regions, how many there are, and what they consist of.
Yeah. So the graphic you see now, this was the initially proposed breakdown for girls regionals, that there would be a west, a south central, central, and southeast. I'll start with southeast. So southeast was proposed as districts 1, 11, and 12. Those hang together out here where I am. So that makes sense. South Central, District 3. District 3 has had numbers to stand alone, so we kind of saw that coming, that they'd likely just be their own district or be their own regional. The West has been growing, so they had 7, 8, 9, and 10 listed here, and Central 2, 4, 5, 6. One thing to note, though, so these aren't even quite in stone yet. We're almost there, but the PIAA has been meeting at least monthly, trying to nail down the girls postseason. So it's been really a developing situation, because sanctioning happened, where their PIAA vote happened in May. They officially took jurisdiction July 1. A bunch of teams formed in the meantime. We came into the fall, teams were still forming, and they're trying to figure out what is this best postseason structure for girls. They already have states nailed down, which is great. But that regional and district piece has just been a little harder because sometimes there's so many moving parts. Part of the hesitation was usually like for boys wrestling or any other sport. I mean, you guys are looking at data that's pretty reliable that you've had for these years, or like that's pretty consistent. And the girls' growth was so sudden that even trying to plan some of this too far in advance felt like is something going to be missed if it's scheduled back in July 1, compared to the actual numbers and breakdown today. So it's, you know, hopefully coaches and ADs can just have a little bit more patience. I know it kind of stinks because it'd be awesome to have this all finalized, but they really are working on it. And it should be announced very soon what the final breakdown is, but you really could see even a couple changes from that previous slide. It is possible.
Just to
And
caveat that and add something, we hit 100 schools late winter, early spring, and it took us the better part of 2 to 3 years to get to 100 schools. From late winter, early spring to now, we've gone from 100 to 185 schools listed in the PIAA portal. So literally just through the latter part of the spring, summer, and fall, we've almost doubled the amount of schools that we anticipated with girls wrestling programs. So and when we're creating regions and setting up regions, PIAA looks at the number of schools in each district to try and help them form what regions they're going to divide things into for the postseason. So yeah, if we did this way back when, we would have had half as many schools to use and trying to account for the regionals. Now we're at 185. It gives us a better idea as to where the population centers are for girls wrestling.
so, Brooke,
Yeah.
you spoke to. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say real quick to Chris's point, and this is a little bit in the nitty gritty, but for those that are detail oriented, Chris's point was a good one about how they use the number of schools. And for boys wrestling, it's interesting because that works, right? Like if you have 15 schools in District 11, and 15 schools in District 1, that you probably have full lineups at those schools. Like you have a good sense of what a bracket would look like. And that is one area where girls wrestling is real different right now. You could have one girls team with 35 girls, and you could have another girls team with 2 girls. And so just looking at school numbers doesn't necessarily give you the most accurate representation of how many girls are truly wrestling in that area. But just as a reminder to everybody, they are going to stick with school numbers. So if regional stuff or district stuff, if it comes out and you're like, that doesn't make sense, it's based on the number of schools. It's not based on the number of wrestlers. And until all our girls teams get those full lineups, some things might feel a little lopsided, and that's just kind of nature of the beast right now.
Right. You'll probably see it grow from, 4 regions to maybe more, as like the South Central District 3 standing alone. I think you see other districts are going to have that ability too, or maybe they'll shorten them up some as to what you said as they grow. So you mentioned states being nailed down. This is probably the most unique year ever at Hershey that we're looking at, because they're kind of like changed everything. And I guess the last I heard in the last steering committee meeting I sat in on, they're going to run 6 mats during the finals. I believe they'll have the 3 championship matches and the 3 third place matches. Now, again, that's the last that I heard. I'm sure you guys are, if it's changed, you probably might have heard differently.
Yeah, so some of that might be the last iteration that was approved or like included in PIAA board minutes. But you could see tweaks to that, I think, as we approach. I think certain things are probably less likely to change. Like it seems like the 6 mats are pretty set, or not for finals, like, but in general, like the whole time, just 6 mats versus 8. I think it's pretty set that they are going to stagger like AA girls AAA or reverse like AAA girls AA through at least the first several rounds. I think that one iteration that came out, it looked like from semis on, everybody would be together. So those types of bets, like that stuff might be pretty consistent. finals or other little tweaks, I could see, it's potential that they'll make those changes. But either way, I mean, I'll wait to hear Chris's perspective. But I know, I mean, in general, I'm so excited. And I just think for anybody, I mean, if you're a boys wrestling fan, girls wrestling fan in general, like, I just think States is going to be so cool. It's going to be amazing just to have the girls there, but also to even have a finals environment where you can see like all the good wrestling, and you're not in these different sessions, but you really might have the opportunity to show up in person and just see so much good wrestling. I don't know, I'm just so excited for it. I think it's going to be an incredible event. So
Now
I hope everybody checks it out.
you mentioned that environment, like, while that the tournament in Gettysburg when I was there was great, bringing it to the Giant Center, I think it just takes that next level, and again, puts more eyes on it. It puts it in front of more people, and it's just a great uh, introduction to a lot of people that maybe, how many little girls are going to be there and like, oh, that looks so cool. Like, I want to be part of that. Like, how many little sisters are going to be in attendance at Hershey that could sway them? I just think I think moving it and them trying to find a way. I'm sure there's going to be bugs to work out this year. I'm sure it's not going to run smoothly. I think they're, logistically they're taking on something that they've never done before, probably even entertained or thought would ever happen. And I'm sure there's going to be parts that are going to, annoy people and people are going to complain. But having them all there together in those same 3 days, I think is the best decision they could have made to best represent all, double A, triple A, and the girls.
This is a quick kudos to Mark Byers and to PIAA, because this is the one thing all along they wanted to get right. A quick knock on our neighbor. So New Jersey, when New Jersey started their first state championship, the very first year, the girls were down in Broadway Hall in Atlantic City with the boys, wrestling right alongside the boys. And however the logistics went, the very next year they pushed the girls back out of Atlantic City and put them in a high school in the middle of central Jersey. And that just was not acceptable after all that those girls had gone through to try and get the sport to where it was. And right from the get-go, conversations with Mark Byers, even leading back a couple of years ago, they have always stated that we're the best wrestling state in the country, and our girls, likewise, are going to deserve the best. They deserve to be there on the Giant Center floor, just like the boys, and they held true to that, and we're really excited. Again, I'm sure there's going to be logistics issues. I'm sure there may be some boys fans that aren't really happy with the setup. At the end of the day, the girls have worked hard for this over the last couple of years, and I think we're all really excited to see what the state championships look like this year.
No, it's great.
And Joe, I think you're right. I think it's going to make more girls wrestling fans. I think it's going to, because when you see it, like you said, it's different than just hearing about it. It's so much easier to get on board when you're actually, it's right in front of you. So I think it's also one of the best things that they could have done to continue to grow the sport. So it should be awesome from that aspect, like you said.
All right. So, we'll finish up like talking just the generally aspects of girls wrestling compared to boys. And, they're not using the same weight classes. So I know we got a graphic there where Mike's going to put it up on the screen so we can just talk just weight classes and the comparative differences.
Well, first I'll just note, because there was some maybe just like miseducation, but the girls junior high, as you can see, they do also have their own weight classes. So when the PIAA began fully sponsoring girls wrestling, they're also sponsoring it at that junior high, middle school level. So it is an official sport. So all the stuff we kind of talked about earlier, like, the scenarios of a girls on a boys team, or a girl, or like a school with a girls and a boys team, or just a boys team, those scenarios also apply to junior high. And so likewise, just like they adopted weight classes at the high school level, they also adopted them at the junior high level. Those high school weights are the NFHS 13 weight classes for girls that they kind of put out, because the National Federation put out those 12, 13, or 14 weight class options. So this is the 13 that they adopted for girls. The junior high, though, was a bit of a different evolution. Chris, I don't know if you want to speak to that at all.
Yeah, I think it was just kind of cobbled together based off how PJW has developed their weights over the last couple of years to try and fit the growing number of girls in there. When PJW started a couple of years ago, they literally just had a few weight classes at each age group, and particularly junior high. I think the first year they did a junior high girls championship, there were only like 5 weight classes. So naturally, through evolution and discussion, maybe taking a little bit of peek at USA Wrestling's weights. A lot of these weights kind of mirror what USA Wrestling does at the 14U level, and they kind of fit right there with the junior high, middle school.
Yeah, and I think if you look at junior high compared to high school, like I think that junior high probably has the most room for some growth and maybe some change, as we get some data. The high school weights, again, those were adopted right from the federation. So I'd kind of be surprised if those shift separately from what, you know, NFHS does. But the junior high ones, I think, there's some, again, room for maybe changes in the future based on OPC data and that type of thing. I don't know, Chris, if you'd agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, with the adopted PIAA, the middle school weights, with the way things are going, you want to go and make a prediction on when we'll have like middle school girls only teams. You think like in your just the way things are going, how soon do you think we are, or how far away are we from schools starting to adopt middle school programs, girls only?
They are already. I mean, if you go and look in the OPC, there's quite a few programs across the state that have already pulled. I know in our area, Upper Perk was one of the first ones to reach out to me to inquire about, hey, what are you guys doing at middle school? We plan on starting a team. Just getting a little bit of guidance as to what events and opportunities might be available to them. I'll be completely honest. I have 5 girls now on my middle school roster. We haven't pulled the admin trigger on that. Really, I'm guilty, right? I'm the same as many of these other coaches where I'm so focused on just trying to get the girls' high school aspect started up. Not that I'm going to leave the middle school girls behind. Several of the high school girls tournaments that we're attending this year have open middle school divisions. And I plan on taking those middle school girls to those tournaments with my high school girls team to give them girl opportunities, and allow them to step away from the boys teams a little bit. Probably next season, I think is when I'm going to look to see if we can find a coach, pull the trigger, and maybe start down that official road of an official middle school girls program and kind of separate the lines a little bit. It is easier for some schools than others too. So at Souderton, Indian Crest is a couple miles up the road from Souderton Area High School. Obviously, we're 2 separate programs. One of the most successful numbers-wise in the state is Cumberland Valley. So Cumberland Valley has their middle school and their high school on the same campus, literally right up the sidewalk from one another. And one of the ways they've been able to grow their numbers, I think last year he had over 50 girls on his high school team, and he had a sizable middle school team as well. They don't have any association really with the boys. They do everything girls only. Every afternoon, they while the boys are practicing in the wrestling room, they walk up the hill, the high school girls team, into the same practice room as the middle school girls. Now, middle school girls can't practice with high school girls, but they can practice in the same room at the same time, and that's exactly what they do, and that's helped their numbers tremendously.
So, I mean, it's my last question for you, both of you, and I'll give you an opportunity to answer. What would be your advice to a parent that is hoping that girls wrestling gets sanctioned in their school or middle school? What would your advice to them how to go about bringing awareness to the school board, to the admin, of a need for a program like this?
I'll let Brooke go. I'm going to say something really quick first. Ask. Brooke will tell you our emails, our social media buckets are filled a couple times a week with parents asking. I just had a parent reach out from District 3. They're in a Catholic school. Because it's a Catholic school, they're not keen on starting a girls program. They've tried to reach out to some of the public schools in and around their area, haven't really gotten anywhere. How can you help us? And we get requests like that kind of often. And Brooke and I will talk to some of the other coaches around the state or in that region, and we'll put them in touch with people and coaches that we trust in those areas to try and take that problem on and help those families out. So yeah, I don't want any girl in the state of Pennsylvania to feel stranded or her family to feel stranded. If you're in a situation where you're getting pushback or you're getting kickback or you really don't know where to turn for answers, reach out. Go to sanctionpa.com, look up the contact information, or you could reach out on Pennsylvania Women's Wrestling on our social media pages and ask us. We'll help you get help.
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, I think there's a general framework that I think we recommend to everybody. Like when Chris is saying, when we get all these emails or these messages, there's kind of this general course of action that we recommend. But then, of course, these very specific scenarios come up, and you're just kind of troubleshooting with people individually. But as a again general guide, like Chris said, first ask. I mean, talk to the coach, educate them, talk to the AD, educate them. And I say educate because I'm not saying that coaches and athletic directors aren't knowledgeable, but just one thing I've learned is that even the process of starting a new team is not something that anybody's necessarily even been through before. Like they truly might not understand what it takes, or that you can actually share coaches with the boys and girls program, or you can practice together. I mean, or that forming a girls team gets you these extra competition points, and that is a change now that it's sanctioned. You can't just go to a girls tournament anymore. I think we take a lot of that information for granted because we're just talking about it all the time. But that's not stuff that, there's no education session that everybody sat down and got. I mean, administrators and coaches might truly not know that. And so really just starting with that open dialogue, and kind of going from there, and then seeing, okay, what kind of little roadblocks are being put up, and then try to troubleshoot. But ultimately, I've always said, like, I'm not a salesperson at all, but talking about girls wrestling always feels really easy because it just feels like a true win-win. And it really does feel like an easy sell in some ways. You don't have to get these new coaches. Sure, as numbers grow, you can. But man, girls just want to participate. Like, you have the infrastructure, just open the door, and there's ways to make that happen. And it's a cost effective sport. There's just so many reasons, but I feel like any scenario that's come up, we've been able to troubleshoot. And there's also this huge piece in the background, I think, but some parents realize just with like Title IX and what their rights are, which really I think is also becoming more talked about, maybe now that it's sanctioned, or maybe now that it feels like some opportunities could truly be off the table. Truly girls can't go to those tournaments anymore. I think we've heard more talk of that, but even that can be done productively, not threateningly, but just productively, even going to a school board meeting and sharing. And many parents have done that. So I respect the time that people have put in to try to get these programs. It's been a lot of work for a lot of people on the ground. But again, I believe in that work, and that it is possible to get programs, and usually just through some genuine dialogue, and basic education.
Great. So again, as Chris said, go to SanctionPA and contact if you got questions. I'm sure some people after tonight watching this, I hope they have some questions. Hope you guys get some more contacts, and we keep growing the sport, because that's what it's all about, is providing these opportunities for female athletes to have the same experience as the boys. And all the parents I know that I talk to whose daughters wrestle, that's like the end game. That's what they want. They want just the same equality as far as competitions and opportunities, as far as going to a state tournament and wrestling at Hershey. And again, I'll go back to it. All those little sisters of brothers that spent too much time in a wrestling room and found a love for this sport, probably at some point in time went to Hershey and maybe thought, why not? Why can't they wrestle there? And now it's a reality. And I think it's, like I said, I couldn't be behind it any more than I already am. So I really appreciate both of you taking some time out of your evening to come on and talk and talk about your unique story and how you helped to get us to where we're at. Anything you need from PIAAWrestling.com, we're here to support you guys, get your message out, and any last things you want to say to anyone out there?
No, likewise, I really appreciate the support that Mike Leister and his entire team at PA Wrestling have done for us. The data, the support, the videos, everything you guys have done has been tremendous in helping us grow and educate and continue to move this thing forward. So thank you.
And I'll echo that for any parent, coach, anybody that's not already on your site. They should definitely go because there's an enormous amount of data. I'm still trying to figure out all the data, but there's so much there. It's really incredible. Yeah. So what a resource.
And now with the added addition of girls wrestling, it's only going to grow with more and archives and all that stuff. So again, it's going to be a place where you can go to from now on and get the information you need. So, well, again, I'll thank you one last time. This is Joe Youngblood from PIAAWrestling.com. Thank you for tuning in, and remember, support girls wrestling.